Oh man, I cannot tell you how much I love mixing, man. The mixing is kind of my favorite stage of everything. When I'm recording a band, or I'm recording somebody, and I'm just thinking, what plugin am I gonna use on that person? I have so many plugins, but I still want them all. So it's pretty hard to get them all. I mean, I don't know how many plugins there are out there, but probably a lot. In the end, I just keep using the same one. I'm attached to one plugin only. But anyway, mixing is so freaking overrated. I cannot tell you why, but I just feel like mixing is so overrated. It's destroying our industry somehow because we're spoiled. Basically, that's what I'm trying to say. Mixing is so overrated. I have mixed feelings about mixing, to be honest. Mixing is so overrated, and I think it's just a excuse for corporations to sell us more gear and make more cash from us. And yeah, I mean, I cannot tell you how much money I've spent in plugins and outboard gear. It's a lot of money. But that's the point. That's what I'm trying to say. Mixing is so freaking overrated. Um, we should be spending more time in the recording stage because that's what it's called. This is called a recording studio. This is called a recording process. It's about recording. It's not about mixing. This is not the mixing process, or this is not the mixing studio. I don't know many studios that are just called mixing. Welcome to the mixing studio. I mean, what would it be? It'd just be a room with speakers? Seriously, just think about it. Mixing is so overrated, and it's taken the wrong way. Uh, this industry has taken the wrong way about mixing. Think of the people back in the day, early recording. This guy right there, his name is Clement Adog. I think that's how you pronounce it. I'm not sure. It's French. But basically, he discovered stereo imaging. In 1881, he was like streaming for the first time stereo audio to radio, and he discovered two channels. Stereo. He put two microphones, left and right, on stage in the Paris theater, and he revolutionized everything. Two channels from 1881 to 1950, 53. Think of the best, greatest recordings, orchestral recordings out there in that time period. They were recorded with two channels. I promise you, the sound engineer that was in charge of that project, he didn't say, "Oh well, I'll make that low end sound better in the mixing stage." No, there was no such a thing as mixing stage. I'm sorry, but back in the day, mixing didn't exist. You know, and still, those recordings still sound awesome. You go and look for them. So later, Ampex came up with 1953 came up with the first 4-track recorder. 4 channels, guys. 4 channels. 1953. Go and listen to records, song hits on that day, on that year. You're gonna find some really awesome recordings, some really awesome songs made with just 4 channels. Just think about it. It just blows my mind that we have gotten so lazy about recording, and we look for every excuse to not get good sounding recordings during the recording stage. They had 4 channels and they were recording orchestras, jazz bands. They were recording amazing stuff with just 4 channels. So just think about it. Then later, Les Paul. Yes, my friend Les Paul. I mean, I don't know him personally, but he's one of my favorite guys because he invented the Les Paul guitar. But also, he was a very smart man. And I'm not sure if he invented this, but he was a pioneer of the 8-track recording. Oh, wow. Now we're back into business. Now we're in drum kit recording standards. 8 channels. Just for that. For drums. We're so spoiled. Oh my gosh. Just think about it. 8 channels. They just had 8 channels to record everything. That was a maximum in so many amazing sounding records. But back in the day, 8 channels, man. What would 8 channels give you? I mean, just think about it. You have to be very efficient about your mic placement, about what who are you gonna take the time to record? You know, I'm not gonna record the guy in the corner that it just kind of sings okay. I'm gonna go and look for a good person that is worth my time, because I just have 8 channels. You know, I might have 4 channels. By 1956, I might can afford 4 channels, because I promise you that the 8 channel recorder was like super expensive, and there was no such a thing as, oh well, I'll fix it later. You know, I'll put some compressors and EQs. You know, the EQs and compressors were so limited. They give you a sound today, but they were so limited. They were not as powerful as the processing power we have today. Um, it just blows my mind that a lot of people today, a lot of engineers, they are so um, they're just so funny, man. It just makes me laugh. Anyway, if you want to know more about old school recording, go and check this channel. Sound on Sound Magazine has a video where this sound engineer goes into a 50s style recording studio and he tracks a band. And basically, he just goes through the process that they were doing back in the day. He records a band with 1 microphone, 2 microphones, and 4 microphones. In the end, he comes with the conclusion that he likes better the recording with 1 microphone. Pretty crazy. Go and check it out. I really highly recommend it. It's going to change your mind of how you approach your recording stage. But anyway, what was mixing back in the day? If mixing wasn't a thing, when mixing came out? Well, mixing back in the day was about balancing. Engineers were called balancing engineers. They were not called mixing engineers. So what was balancing? Well, balancing, for you guys that don't know about mixing, is the first stage of mixing. Balancing is about adjusting levels. So adjusting levels is turning volumes up and down to make it sound coherent. So if you have a guitar that is too loud and is getting in the way of the vocal, turn that guitar down a little bit, so everything is balanced and pretty. That's what it was. Back in the day, mixing engineers were called balancing engineers. They were not called mixing engineers. There were no such a thing. The processing, EQs, and compressors, they were too limited. They were not as powerful as the stuff we have right now. We're so spoiled right now. So we're such spoiled brats. Yeah, think about it. Nowadays, we have the power to mix everything. Oh my gosh, it's just crazy to me. How many plugins do I have? And I just use one, to be honest. I'm attached to one plugin, and that's it. So I'm going to give you 2 secrets to record, to get great sounding recordings. And the first one is going to be a bummer to you. Number 1, get a good sound source. What is the difference between you and your hero? Your hero records the best musicians in the world. You probably record your college friend or your neighbor that plays acoustic guitar. That's the difference. Go and get a good sound source, man. You have to be able to value yourself as a sound engineer and say, you know what, I'm not going to waste my time on my neighbor playing the acoustic guitar. I mean, I might record him just for doing him a favor, but I'm not going to spend my whole weekend working on him. Good musicians, that's what you need. Why do you think those recordings from the 50s and early 40s and 30s, they sound amazing? The musicians back in the day, they were so talented. They didn't have Melodyne to make those harmonies sound perfect. No, they didn't have any of that. It was actually something that was happening. The performance was magnificent. That's what the engineer was capturing, a good performance. It was not about, oh, well, I'll make it sound good in the mixing. No, you can't do that. Like, if you want a good recording, you can't do that. And that's what's happening now with society. People have become lazy on that stuff. Performers think that they can just get it fixed later. You need to just get a good sound source, period. Forget about the non-talented people. If you want to be a good sound engineer, you have to be a jerk and just be like, I just recording good sounding musicians, and I'm not gonna record okay musicians. Don't get me wrong, you can give them a chance, but don't focus yourself on them. Focus on the best guitar player in town, on the best singer in town, and the best drummer in town. You know? The next one is a good microphone approach. Go play with your microphones. Know your microphones. Know your microphone techniques. Learn the frequency response of your microphones. Know how to approach a sound with your microphone. How those guys from the early days did it. Well, first of all, they apply secret number one really well. They were not gonna waste time with John, the neighbor. They were gonna waste time with the best of the best because they didn't have time to fix things. They couldn't fix things. And second, it was on them to capture that beautiful performance, those beautiful harmonies from the 40s. It was their job to capture the best interpretation of that performance with a microphone. So move the microphone around. It's not just about sticking the mic in front of the vocalist and 3 inches away and put a pop filter on it. Dude, try 2 microphones. Why not? See what happens. Put a microphone 5 feet away from the singer and see what happens. You know, play with your microphones. You never know how it's gonna sound. Anyway, so why am I telling you of this? Because I'm bringing something to you with what I call the lazy engineer syndrome. And what is the lazy engineer syndrome? Well, to be honest, I've been guilty of this. And I've done it a few times in my younger life. You go in the recording studio, you're recording, then you get tired, you want to go home, and everything seems good enough. Everything you're doing is good enough. Everything the singer or the vocalist is doing is good enough. So you start getting in that mindset. Oh, okay, that's good enough. So the lazy engineer syndrome is the illusion to achieve a better sound during the mixing stage. Famous phrase. I heard so many engineers use this. I'll fix that in post. You can't fix bad. I'm giving it to you right now. Bad is always gonna be bad. You might can make it sound okay, but do you want to do okay in your life? I don't. I want to be my best. Many of us suffer of this syndrome because we have the luxury. Back in the day, the engineers didn't have that luxury of fixing it in the post. They had to find the best musicians, and they were gonna waste their time and money with the best because they didn't have time and they didn't have the power to fix the pitch or the drum timing. They didn't have that. You know, they were pretty limited. It is pretty sad what's happening with today's music industry because, to be honest, is just going down. Talented people are becoming fewer and fewer. And engineers are just paying for it, you know? Engineers are paying for it because we're recording crappy musicians that are expecting to sound really good in the mixing stage. And that's our fault. We created that as engineers by telling our musicians, oh, don't worry, I'll fix it later. It doesn't work that way. That's what the lazy engineer syndrome is. Just an illusion to achieve a better sound during the mixing stage. That illusion sometimes is fake. It doesn't exist. It's an illusion. If it doesn't sound good in the recording stage, it's never gonna sound good. So, just remember, bad recordings will always be bad recordings, no matter what you do. Now, a good recording will always be a good recording. Always be a good recording. You know what's the best thing about good recordings? They can always be better. Simple. How awesome would that be? You know? You have a good sounding guitar. You can make it sound better if you want to. And if you don't, well, it already sounds good. Just make it fit in the mix. It already sounds good. What's the deal? A bad recording is always going to be a bad recording. No matter what you do to it, it's always going to be bad. It's always going to be bad. It might be okay, but do you want to be an okay engineer? Because I don't. I want to be my best, you know. So, find a good sound source, man. Forget about Johnny or John, your neighbor. Forget about Uncle Sam. Go and find the best musicians out there. Don't waste your time with bad musicians. Give them the chance. Record them, but don't waste your weekend, your week working with bad musicians. You can give them a chance, record them for a few hours and just charge them $50 or whatever they want to pay you and just move on. But don't waste your time on, oh, I'm gonna produce this, a full production. I'm gonna waste my time and just make it sound awesome. No, you can't make a bad band sound good. So, value yourself. Find a good source. The second one is use the photographer's approach. This approach is something that I learned from a photographer friend of mine. She was explaining to me how she approaches photography and how she uses her cameras and lenses to capture a specific image, a specific moment, situation. And I was like, you know what? This translates really well in the sound, with sound purposes too. You know, if you think of sound as an image traveling around throughout space, it is the same thing. So basically, the photographer's approach, this is my definition of it, is the microphone acts like the photographer's camera, and its pickup pattern acts like the camera's lens. Just pretty simple. Just think about this camera that is really good at capturing low light. I don't know anything about cameras, but this camera is pretty good at capturing pictures at low light. What would be the equivalent of that? Well, think, let's say a ribbon mic, because the diaphragm moves pretty slow, so it's not gonna capture enough high frequencies. So for that, you're gonna get a darker sound. Okay, that's the contrast. You know, pickup patterns act like lenses. Well, think about a 360-degree camera. Those cameras have a 360-degree lens that just captures everything around it. What would be the equivalent pickup pattern of it? Well, pretty obvious, an omnidirectional mic. You know, you're gonna think of it as, okay, well, I need to capture this whole environment that is happening in this room. What am I gonna use? Okay, well, I think I can use a omnidirectional mic. You know, I'm trying to capture all the images around it. So, an example to make it easier. Here's an image. This is called a close-up. You know, if you don't know what a close-up is, it's basically a picture, a very close image of a source, of a visual source. This is a microphone placed right in front of this the vocalist, and is acting as a close-up camera. You know, think of it as taking a picture of the mouth. This microphone is just gonna capture this. It's not gonna capture this guy here or this guy here, because these two guys are outside of the close-up. Now, if you bring that mic back like 10 feet, then you're gonna get a more of a landscape feel on a camera. You're gonna capture more of a wide angle, and you're gonna get in the sound realm. You're gonna be capturing the room, and you're gonna be capturing all the singers singing. So it's basically, that's what it is. It's just kind of comparing and approaching sound like if it was a picture, if it was an image. Like if sound moved like light, maybe. I don't know. But anyway, you know, mixing is not overrated. Don't get me wrong. I love mixing, but I don't want you to spend hours and hours just fixing a bad recording, a bad track, a bad sounding snare. You know, I've known people that have spent 4 hours in trying to fix one thing, And I tell them, you could just record. You can just call this person and ask them to come and record again. We find a better way. We've done it. It works out much better. You know, it's the mixing stage should not be all about fixing bad recordings. It should be about having fun, you know? It's about taking your creativity as far as you can with sound. You know, that good sounding guitar sounds awesome, but I can make it sound much better if I put this reverb and this delay, ping pong delay or whatever. I don't know. But if you're mixing and in your way is the fixing mindset of, oh, I gotta fix this bad timing drum kit, I gotta fix this pitchy vocal, or this guitar player didn't play the right notes in the solo, or whatever, or this mic sounds out of phase because I use a poor miking technique and I cannot fix it, you know, or whatever sound. To just stop thinking about, I'll fix it in the mixing, I'll fix it in post philosophy. I promise you that if you forget and you stop being a lazy engineer, you gonna improve so much as a recording engineer slash just sound engineer in general. Go and do live sound. Live sound will help you a lot because you have one chance to mic that drum kit, and if you do it wrong, you're gonna know it. You know, you're gonna get feedback, or you're gonna get phase issues, or you're just gonna get weird things if you do a poor miking technique. So anyway, if you like this, just please let me know. I'm not gonna tell you to subscribe. Probably you don't want to subscribe, but if you want to, go ahead. Thank you so much for watching. Go and make great records. Go and just focus on your recording stage. Forget about the lazy engineer syndrome. Don't think like that. Go and make a great recording by recording great sounds. Anyway, thanks guys.